Danzo's sin as Hokage was destined to fail, not necessarily because of external circumstances, but because of his shadowy past catching up with him once he entered into the light. Even on the way to the Five Kage summit, he was ambushed by the Wood Village, who apparently had fought either the root or the leaf in the past. Danzo still managed to screw things up in the present by manipulating Mifune in front of all the other Kage, proving to them he could not be trusted. Ultimately, one of the heaviest shadows ended his lifelong Hokage aspirations, and his life as well. Danzo stepping out of the shadows allowed for Sasuke to enact revenge on him, with the help of Obito. However, even if his perspective is warped, he did put his life on the line to defend the Leaf Village, when he could no longer run from his past. All the other Hokages did the same at one point, but none of them brought their demise onto themselves as much as Danzo. The other Hokages would never end up in a situation like this, but this is an interesting question to ask how well they would do against Sasuke here. This is the newest video in my What If vs. Battle Hybrid series. For videos like this, I usually take a battle and swap out one opponent with many others to gauge how well they would do in the original fighter's circumstances. For example, I've done a video similar to this one where I replaced Sasuke with each Akatsuki member in the 5 Kage Summit to judge how well they would do. I had them try to kill Danzo like Sasuke wanted to, which meant they had to go through the 5 Kage first and maybe eventually fight Danzo as well. In this video, I'll switch out Danzo with each Hokage to see how well they do against a bloodlusted Sasuke. Since Sasuke's rage played a role in how this fight went, we'll say that Sasuke believes that his opponent ordered the Uchiha Massacre like Danzo. It should also be noted that Sasuke has the help of Karin here, and that Obito is present as well. Just like originally, Obito will not interfere unless Sasuke is in a dire position. Obito will also want to finish off each Hokage if Sasuke can't, since Danzo had to deal with this. Before I get into any more specifics, I should talk about this video's sponsor. Let me tell you a little secret. A secret about a hidden gem. A free hidden gem. Something that costs you nothing but makes your entire life millions of times better. It also happens to be the greatest mobile game of all time, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid's got tons of champions, over 600 now. All of those champions come from unique factions, each with their own history in the world of Telleria. My personal favorite is the elves. I always love elves, they're always just my favorite in every fantasy story. The elves in Raid are pretty awesome. They formed a civilization like thousands of years ago, surviving orc rampages and the collapse of the Lizardman Empire, which I absolutely want to learn more about someday. Then Searoth got into their heads and created the Dark Elves. These guys were obsessed with power, and they tried to convert the whole kingdom of Eravia to shadow magic. They got caught out though, and the whole kingdom descended into civil war. It was brutal, but in the end the Dark Elves got exiled, and Eravia rebuilt as best they could. And they did pretty well, since now the kingdom of Eravia is the brightest, richest, and most powerful country in the realm of Telleria. And all of the playable high elves are just as interesting as well. My personal favorite would have to be Vergis, due to him having perhaps the best armor design out of all the champions in the game. And this month, Raid's got a non-stop schedule of special events and activities, including Forge Pass Season 3, with some amazing rewards to offer, including a limited edition artifact set. If that's not enough, Raid's bringing out some new champions, along with some awesome looking champion skins for the incredible Madame Ceres. But wait, here's the big news. Later this month, Raid is giving everybody's favorite champion the upgrade he deserves. You might have seen a struggle for awesomeness in some of Raid's hilarious videos, but finally Death Knight is becoming a legendary champion. It's something we've all been waiting for, and I can't wait to see how Ultimate Death Knight turns out. This is the best time to get started in Raid, and if you click my link in the description or scan my QR code here on the screen, you'll get unique bonuses worth $30. We're talking a free epic champion, Rector Droth, 200k silver, 1 energy refill, and 1 XP boost and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in the game. And if you look into the inbox on the home screen, all the treasure will be waiting for you here, and these awards will be available to new players for only the next 30 days. And I just want to give a big thanks to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video, and I highly suggest checking them out. Before I start, I should clarify some of the versions of each Hokage I'll be using and why. For Hiruzen, I'll be using Old Hiruzen because we don't know exactly what Prime Hiruzen is capable of. For Kakashi, I'll be using Warrior Kakashi for 2 reasons. One being that I believe Boruto and Naruto should not be scaled together because of how different they are. The other being I haven't read Kakashi's novel. Lastly, I'll be using Sage Mode Naruto because that's the most powerful version of Naruto that makes this a fair fight. The first win condition is to force Obito to save Sasuke, the second win condition is to defeat either Sasuke or Obito, and the third win condition is to defeat both Sasuke and Obito. I'll be starting with Warrior Kakashi first. Kakashi will be confronted by Obito at Samurai Bridge. Obito will first take out Fu and Torne, and then after that he will teleport Sasuke and Karin in front of Kakashi. Karin will take cover, and Sasuke will be hungry to avenge his clan. As we know, Kakashi and Sasuke did briefly fight originally, but there is little we can gather here because Sasuke was exhausted at this point, and this isn't War Kakashi either. We did see Kakashi have to Kamui one Susanoo arrow though. At the beginning of the fight, Sasuke's Susanoo will not have evolved enough in order to shoot arrows, so I'll talk about that if this fight gets to that point. I would expect for Sasuke to start by trying to destroy Kakashi with just a skeletal Susanoo. This worked well against Danzo because he was dumb enough to stay close to the Susanoo, after being killed by it several times. The first time Danzo was killed, Sasuke surprised him by grabbing him with the Susanoo ribcage. It depends on how this fight goes, but this is a win condition for Sasuke. He could let Kakashi charge at him and surprise Kakashi at the last second by using the Susanoo to block, and then grab Kakashi. Assuming that doesn't happen, Sasuke will still want to use the Susanoo early, as he indicated before the summit that's what he wanted to test out. In this scenario, Kakashi will have time to get out of the Susanoo's attack range. This version of the Susanoo is not very mobile, considering that the fastest we've seen it move laterally is walking speed, but that's not that much of a disadvantage if your opponent is not a long-range fighter. Kakashi only has 2 long-range jutsus worth noting here, more or less. The first one is Fanged Pursuit, which he used against Zabuza, but that only works because he was able to get his blood onto Zabuza, allowing for the dogs to track him. Even if he were able to get his own scent on Sasuke, the Susanoo would still protect him from Kakashi while the dogs restrain him. The other one is Kamui. We did see in the war arc Kakashi almost Kamui'd the Geto statue's head before Obito stopped it. This means he could Kamui something as big as Susanoo as well. The problem is that this would leave him extremely vulnerable during and afterwards. Using Kamui on something that big forces Kakashi to become motionless while using it, and briefly exhaust him afterwards. Sasuke could use this opportunity window to counter by throwing his sword, or even use Amaterasu if he feels like it. If Sasuke chooses not to counter, he could just throw the Susanoo back up anyway. We saw him do this not long after he deactivated it in his fight against Danzo. We also saw Itachi do it when he would block Karin with it, and activated it again right after. It wouldn't be a winning exchange for Kakashi because Sasuke can just use it again when need be. Using Kamui on just Sasuke himself would also be impractical because we never saw Kakashi use Kamui on just a human and it work. He used it on Data's arm, but that was while Data was off guard. He didn't even try this against Kaguzu Pain or Obito. Kakashi has also never shown any jutsu that has the attack power to break through the Susanoo either, so it would be hard to see Kakashi winning this one. Even if Kakashi tries to time out the Susanoo, Sasuke can just deactivate it, start fighting Kakashi without it, and then activate it again once he's close to him. On the other hand, Sasuke has several win conditions. Sasuke could catch him off guard by grabbing him with the Susanoo ribcage. He could also counterattack with something like Amaterasu when Kakashi is using Kamui. Overall, it just comes down to Kakashi having no answer to dealing with the Susanoo. This means Kakashi doesn't manage to clear any win conditions. I'm aware many of my viewers say I downplay War Kakashi, so if you want more of my view on him, you should watch my video on him. It's mainly about how a lot of his feats aren't as impressive as you think if you consider that he was mostly fighting in a supporting position instead of being in the front line. I don't have the time to go super in depth on the fight, so I suggest clicking that link in the description if you want more of an explanation of things like how fast Kakashi is. Even if you want to say that he's the faster one here in this fight, he still has no good way to deal with Susanoo. Next is Tsunade. Once Obito has set up the fight, Tsunade will start the fight like every other fight she's been in. She'll just be trying to pulverize Sasuke with her taijutsu. Sasuke isn't afraid to take her on like this, as he did fearlessly fight the Kage without a Susanoo ribcage at first. He tried stabbing the Kage with his sword, and he also used Chidori against him. If he tries that here, it won't work because Tsunade has shown the ability to heal through wounds that bad and keep fighting. On the flip side, how devastating are Tsunade's punches here? If Sasuke only uses his Susanoo ribcage, that should not be enough to fully protect him. A at full power was able to shatter half the Susanoo ribcage, and Madara said that Tsunade was physically stronger than A. This would be a bad blow for Sasuke, but it wouldn't be hard for him to power up his Susanoo into a skeletal Susanoo before Tsunade capitalizes on the initial damage. I also would expect Sasuke to start with a skeletal Susanoo if he sees how powerful Tsunade is before he decides to use Susanoo. Either way, we get to the stage of the fight where Tsunade has to deal with a skeletal Susanoo.
We've seen her beat around Madara's full-body Susanos, but those were weaker because Madara's clones were using them. When we saw her punch the real Madara Susanoo ribcage, she was only able to partially crack it, so I don't see her breaking Sasuke's skeletal Susanoo since that's the case. This is supported by the fact that A didn't do anything once Sasuke put up his skeletal Susanoo at the summit. In fact, he looked like he didn't know what to do once the Susanoo had gotten that big. So if A couldn't do anything, I don't expect Tsunade to do much better. I could see her beating around the Susanoo some, but not making any progress on breaking it. Now, she was able to continually fight against Madara's clone Susanos, but Madara was not aiming to kill the 5 Kage. He played around with them until they finally pushed him, and he left them on the brink of death instead of outright killing them. This is because Madara wanted to lead them to the promised land of the infinite Tsukuyomi. Sasuke doesn't care about any of that, and instead is bloodlusted over wanting to avenge his clan. So when Madara was fighting her, she was able to continue fighting because Madara held back by just stabbing her instead of slicing her in half. She has the capability of fighting with Susanoo swords inside her, but once Sasuke realizes this, he'll instead opt to cut her in half. There's no way for her to avoid this because she's a close-range fighter. If she tries to wait out the Susanoo, Sasuke can just deactivate it, go fight her, and then reactivate it again once he's in range again. And I don't think she has the raw power to destroy Sasuke's skeletal Susanoo based on what I said earlier. Eventually this fight will end with Sasuke cutting her in half, and then finishing her off when she's immobile. This means Tsunade fails to clear any of the wing conditions. Next is Old Hiruzen. This one is interesting because had Hiruzen survived far enough into part 2, this fight could have happened. Anyway, Hiruzen is always tough to figure out because we don't fully know what he's capable of even as an old man. We do know that Orochimaru had to use his reanimations to fight him instead of actually fighting him himself. In the anime, Orochimaru gets involved here and there with his reanimations, but in the manga he does nothing until they are sealed. After they're sealed, Hiruzen is able to very easily disarm Orochimaru, and then use the Reaper Death Seal. The Reaper Death Seal won't be useful in this situation though, because Obito and Karin are there as an emergency backup for Sasuke. Hiruzen knows this, and wouldn't even consider doing this unless there was one fighter left. Another mystery about Hiruzen is how much attack power he has in his arsenal. When Obito attacked the Leaf with the Nine Tails, Hiruzen was the main one fighting the Nine Tails while Minato was fighting Obito. In the anime, Hiruzen was able to push the Nine Tails out of the village with the monkey stick by himself, but I use the manga as the primary interpretation. In the manga, it's not shown exactly how Kurama is pushed out of the village, but it looks like Hiruzen is working with many other shinobi to do it. My guess is that they were combining their projectile jutsus to zone out the Nine Tails out of the village. We've also seen the monkey stick used in the war, and it didn't get to comical levels of size like against the Nine Tails in the anime. We saw him cut down a god tree branch, and it only looks several times larger than Hiruzen. The last instance I'll mention here before we talk about the fight is him battling Guru Guru. We do see an impressive scale to his nature transformations, and he has the ability to use all 5 at the same time. So let's go over how everything I brought up works out in this particular fight. Easily disarming Orochimaru is irrelevant at the beginning of the fight because if you haven't figured it out already, the Susanoo is coming up early. I don't think the monkey stick will be useful here because based on the manga, it won't have better range than the Susanoo. So if Hiruzen tries to smack the Susanoo with it, he'd be very vulnerable to getting hit by the Susanoo too. Also, Sasuke can use his own sword to combat the monkey stick, and the Susanoo sword should hit much harder. It was able to take out all the pillars in the 5 Kage summit, which is a far greater scale of attack than the monkey stick cutting a god tree branch. Even if you say that the monkey stick is superior to the Susanoo sword, Sasuke is far more protected than Hiruzen in this interaction. It'd only take one hit for Sasuke to kill him, whereas the monkey stick can only push back the Susanoo at best. The last thing Hiruzen has in this situation is his nature transformations. We did see Danzo use a wind combination attack that was able to severely damage Sasuke's upgraded Susanoo. He used his summon sucking in air to amplify his own wind jutsu in order to do this. If Hiruzen were to try some type of all-out attack before Sasuke upgrades his Susanoo, I would lean towards it working. It's possible he could use his clones to use all chakra natures at once in order to break the Susanoo. I wouldn't expect for this just to defeat Sasuke though, as the Susanoo could block most of the damage, like when Itachi's Susanoo blocked most of the damage from Karin before breaking. He could also jump out of it if he sees it beginning to break. From there, it's questionable how well Hiruzen does, because we don't know the full extent of how well he does in close quarters combat. He was able to disarm Orochimaru, but Sasuke should be better at Kenjutsu than Orochimaru by this point. And we saw Sasuke do well against version 1A. It's possible that Sasuke's fatigue will be infecting him too much, but the same is true for Hiruzen, as he did complain about fatigue early on when he was fighting Orochimaru. Something else I should note is that in this situation, Sasuke can use Amaterasu to deal with any of the elemental attacks Hiruzen uses as a defense, and then use it offensively immediately after. So with all that being said, it's a little iffy as to who has the advantage here. Sasuke using a Susanoo again and upgrading it would be risky, as Hiruzen might be able to break it again with an all-out attack. But this version of Susanoo would have arrows, so that would be something Hiruzen might not be able to deal with. I'm saying maybe a lot here because it depends on if you high or low ball old Hiruzen. I lean towards Sasuke winning this without Obito's help. I think he has a better and more reliable win conditions. If you want to highball Hiruzen as high as possible, you could use Kabuto's statement that said he was the strongest of the 5 Kage at his death. If he's stronger than Onoki, then he does have a good shot at forcing Obito to intervene. If Obito intervenes, this would be the end of the line for Hiruzen, as he has no way to deal with Kamui. A Reaper Death Seal would not work because that would let Obito suck him into the Kamui dimension. So overall, in my opinion, Hiruzen most likely can't clear any win conditions, but he has a chance of forcing Obito to intervene if you highball him. Next is Sage Mode Naruto in the Pain arc. If you want a more in-depth analysis of this, I have a video on it, and I'll try to remember to link it in the description, although some of my opinions in that video are outdated now. For this fight, it won't be in character, so Sasuke will still believe that Naruto executed his clan, and Naruto will be trying to kill Sasuke. The first thing I'll need to address is the moment where Zetsu says that Naruto is stronger than Sasuke before the summit. Many people view this as an absolute fact that proves that Sage Mode Naruto is stronger than Kage Summit Sasuke, but if you add context, it doesn't make sense. This happened before the summit, when Sasuke could barely use Amaterasu and couldn't use Susanoo. So Naruto was stronger than Sasuke before the Kage Summit, but that doesn't mean he's still stronger than Sasuke towards the end of it. One more thing I should note is that I'll be giving Naruto 2 Sage Mode Shadow Clones to use to replenish his Sage Mode, as that's how many he used for the Pain fight. Moving past all that, let's look at how well these two match up. Taijutsu doesn't matter so much at first because Sasuke will just start using his Susanoo instead. So how well does Naruto do against the skeletal Susanoo? The only thing that could be used would be a Rasen Shuriken. A massive Rasengan failed to damage Madara's Susanoo ribcage, and like I said earlier, Sasuke's skeletal Susanoo should be stronger. A Rasen Shuriken should be strong enough to destroy the skeletal Susanoo. We saw Warwick Sage Mode Naruto use it to greatly damage the Ninetales. However, this is not Warwick Sage Mode Naruto. I still do believe that it would be enough, since Danzo's wind style could greatly damage the upgraded Susanoo, but this is still a situation similar to Hiruzen's, where Sasuke will survive the attack, and just have to fight without his ultimate defense afterwards. So how well does Sasuke do in this situation? I've thought about this a lot, and I found it hard to compare the two when it comes to speed and close quarters combat. We saw Naruto go up against the 3rd Raikage in Sage Mode, but this was in the war, so he'd be much stronger by then. I bring that up because when Sasuke went against the 4th Raikage, he could physically react well to him in version 1, and had to use Flame Control to react to A when he entered version 2. We know that Naruto didn't surpass version 2A in lateral speed until he unlocked KCM mode, so Naruto won't be blitzing Sasuke here since Sasuke can react to version 2A with Flame Control. We also saw some of the weaker passive pain react to Rasen Shuriken when the human path threw the animal path out of his blast radius. This same path was blitzed by Sage Mode Jiraiya, and I would say that Sasuke had surpassed Sannin level by this point for sure. So with all that being said, I think Sasuke can react well to Naruto's attacks, but can he defend against them? He may be able to dodge a Rasen Shuriken, but if he can't, he has 2 options. He can throw up the Susanoo again, or he can use Amaterasu to nullify it. In fact, the wind style should amplify the Amaterasu since wind is weak to fire. And this brings up, how does Naruto deal with Amaterasu? His Sage Mode allows him to have danger sensing, and he is familiar with Amaterasu based on previous encounters with Itachi. So he won't be that caught off guard by it, but he would be caught off guard by the Flame Control. I don't think it's likely Sasuke tries Amaterasu offensively here, but if he does, Naruto should be able to summon his Shadow Clone in front of him to take the hit. Naruto could react well to the Diva Path when it came to Taijutsu, so I think he could make one sign in a scenario like this. I don't think Naruto using other close-quarter combat tactics will work here, because Sasuke can throw up his Susanoo ribcage like he did when he was fighting A. Like I said earlier, if Sasuke can react to version 2A, then he can also react to Sage Mode Naruto. From there, Sasuke would likely upgrade his Susanoo and begin trying to shoot Susanoo arrows at Naruto. This is dangerous offensively and can also be used defensively to stop Rasen Shurikens. Unlike last time, Naruto can't just throw a Rasen Shuriken at the Susanoo from a safe distance. He would have to mount some type of distraction and then hit it from either above or behind. He's certainly capable of tactics like this, as we did see him do this against Kakuzu in Pain. Against Pain, he used smoke bombs and then threw a clone disguised as a Rasen Shuriken. And behind that clone was the real Rasen Shuriken. Something like that could work because Sasuke wouldn't have time to reload an arrow for the real Rasen Shuriken. This would lead to a Susanoo being destroyed and him being quite exhausted by this point in the fight. Naruto would also likely be getting close to running out of Sage Mode by this point too. At this point in the fight, it's hard to say who wins because it partially depends on how much Sage Mode Naruto has left. Sasuke will be gassed at this point too, like how he was when he fought Danzo. He had to resort to a mutual blow at the end, and failed to hit Danzo with Chidori after that mutual blow didn't take Danzo down. If Naruto still has Sage Mode, then Sasuke would definitely be defeated due to exhaustion. It's a very close fight, and I lean towards Naruto winning it. Sasuke would have to deal with roughly 6 Rasen Shurikens before Sage Mode runs out. I don't think he can just dodge them all, and the methods he'd have to use to deal with them are exhausting based on the stamina he displayed against Danzo. But Obito isn't just going to let Sasuke die here. Once he steps in, Naruto would be done for because he has no way to deal with Kamui. KCM Naruto can deal with it, so the same happens here. This means Sage Mode Naruto likely clears the first win condition of forcing Obito to save Sasuke, but can't clear any other win conditions. Next is Tobirama. What I first need to do is clarify some things about his fighting style and speed. Tobirama isn't going to be using Flying Raijin very liberally like Minato does. When Minato fights, he spreads markers all around the battlefield, and constantly teleports for defensive and offensive purposes. When Tobirama fights, he uses it much less often, and more so as an offensive tactic. In the war, we saw Minato teleport a Jubi Bomb, the Alliance out of a barrier, and Naruto and Sasuke away from Obito several times. The only time we see Tobirama teleport defensively is when he's teleported others away from the God Tree. There are some other moments where he turns defense into offense, though, such as when he teleported a bomb Obito planted on Minato back to Obito. Another moment is when he tries to Flying Raijin slice Madara. Madara makes the kunai fly up in the air above them, and then Tobirama teleports to that kunai and immediately attacks again. So despite Tobirama reacting to Madara's attack, he ended up getting defeated off panel right after that. It's impressive that he dodged a Madara, but this fight shows that Tobirama is not the type just to dodge every single attack. Another fight that gets exaggerated is him placing explosive tags on Jubito. He did this after Jubito destroyed half of his Edo body, so had he been alive he wouldn't have pulled that off. Another thing I want to mention is that Tobirama can only use Tandem Paper Bomb if he uses Edo Tensei, which he won't because that's a forbidden jutsu that also requires prep time. Lastly, despite how badass it was, Tobirama flexing his chakra on Sasuke does not automatically mean that Tobirama was stronger than EMS Sasuke. Sasuke's had a reaction like that in almost every fight he's been in. It's an anime, so characters can get dramatic. So with all that being said, I'm just trying to point out that Tobirama isn't going to kill Sasuke here before Sasuke can register what happened, and that Tobirama isn't going to just teleport to dodge every single attack. Sasuke will be activating the Susanoo early just like against Danzo, so how well does Tobirama do with that? I would imagine he would do fine with that considering he was able to dodge Madara's attack at point blank range at least once. He'd be able to create some distance and then plot out what he'd be doing from there. The only thing he can do is try an all-out water attack, similar to how Danzo used an all-out wind attack. The only time we saw Tobirama use a large-scale water-style attack was when he was heavily weakened in Edo Tensei in Part 1. At full power, I would expect that water vortex to be much bigger, but how much bigger is harder to determine. Even if we lowball Tobirama here and say his water style can't damage the Susanoo, I think he probably does fine. His water style can be used as suppressive fire, and he can react well to the skeletal Susanoo. When the Susanoo evolves and starts shooting arrows is when things become more trickier for Tobirama though. Danzo for the most part could now react to these arrows. The one time he did, he let a tree grow out of his arm in order to divert the arrow's path away from him. If Danzo can do that, then Tobirama should be able to teleport away. Now, like I said earlier about his fight with Madara, he's not just going to teleport away constantly. But he can do other things like possibly use water style to divert an arrow away, or just use water style as suppressive fire. I don't believe Tobirama would have the firepower to break the Susanoo, especially since it has a shield to protect it. Danzo was able to cause a diversion so that he could attack the exposed back of the Susanoo, but I can't think of any good diversion Tobirama can do here. So it's kind of a tough spot for Tobirama, but if he can outlast the Susanoo, he'll be fine. He reacted to Madara's attack speed once, so a tired Kage Summit Sasuke will be slow enough for him to be able to duke it out with. His water style counters Sasuke's fire style, and flying Raijin Slice would be a win option too. Sasuke would be too tired to fight Tobirama at this stage of the fight based on what we saw in the original fight. After Sasuke stopped using Susanoo, he had to resort to a mutual strike and then failed to hit Danzo with a Chidori after that. So overall, I lean towards Tobirama winning due to waiting out the Susanoo and then easily beating an exhausted Sasuke. However, it would be a very lengthy defensive campaign for Tobirama, so it is possible Sasuke could hit him with a Susanoo arrow eventually. Obito would not let Sasuke die here though, and would save him like he'd saved him when he passed out at the 5 Kage Summit. This means Tobirama would have to fight Obito, and Obito wins this. He'll have seen Flying Raijin by now, and it would not be fast enough to beat Kamui. It took Flying Raijin level 2 for Obito to get hit by Minato, and Tobirama doesn't even have level 2. He also noted that his level 1 was slower than Minato, and Minato's level 1 didn't work against Obito. This means that Tobirama likely clears the first wing condition, but can't clear the second because he can't beat Obito. Next is Minato. Like Naruto, Minato also has a history with the 4th Raikage. A admitted that Minato was faster than his own top speed. Sasuke could react to A's top speed too, but not as well. He could use flame control to protect himself, whereas Minato could teleport away and then immediately teleport back to A in order to attack him. So that right there already establishes that Minato is faster than Kage Summit Sasuke, but this shouldn't surprise anyone. This speed advantage doesn't matter so much at the beginning of the battle, because Sasuke will throw up his ultimate defense early. So how does Minato deal with this? He actually likely does not have the firepower to destroy it all by himself, as the most powerful attack we've seen him do was a Rasengan. That won't be enough to break a skeletal Susanoo, so Minato will have to employ a similar strategy to Tobirama's. As I said earlier, Minato isn't afraid to frequently teleport defensively in a fight, so he'll do that here. I explained earlier how Tobirama could likely react well to the Susanoo, and Tobirama admitted that Minato's Flying Raijin level 1 was faster than his. Minato also has a better way to deal with Susanoo arrows as well. He's able to teleport projectiles, and he's shown this when he teleported a Ten-Tails tailed Beast Bomb far away from the Shinobi Alliance. If he can handle something like that, then he can certainly handle something like teleporting Susanoo arrows. So this doesn't put Sasuke in a good position because his Susanoo can't touch Minato, and Amaterasu does not work well either, considering that A could dodge it. If Sasuke resorts to fighting without a Susanoo, he'll likely lose. Minato's Flying Raijin level 2 is too fast for Obito to react with Kamui, so I don't think Sasuke would be able to react here. Even if he could, he has no wing conditions himself, and will only become more fatigued the more he uses his Mangekyo. Obito may or may not get the chance to save him, but for now I'll just assume that he does. Sasuke would let Karin heal him and replenish his chakra, while Obito covers for him. This fight isn't in character, so they won't know anything about each other beforehand. Obito will observe many of Minato's abilities during Sasuke's fight, though. He knew them in their original fight too, so it won't matter much to him anyway. Although it is hard to determine how much stronger Orange Mask Obito is than the Obito that fought Minato. Obito doesn't do too much fighting during the first half of Part 2, but becoming older should have made him stronger. The problem is that I just don't know how much stronger he really became. I don't believe Minato loses here because Obito won't be able to Kamui him before he teleports away. Obito also may still be too slow to react to Flying Raijin level 2 as well. One thing Obito does have going for him is Izanagi this time around. If he were to use it after being hit with Rasengan, he could do something like save Sasuke again and then make the executive decision to retreat into the Kamui dimension. I lean towards this being the outcome because neither Uchiha has any way of hitting Minato. This means Minato likely clears all wing additions by possibly killing Sasuke or by forcing all of his opponents to retreat. Last is Hashirama. Hashirama is often the outlier in these types of videos because I have no way to nerf him like I can with Naruto. It should be no surprise that Hashirama beats Sasuke here, considering that he beat EMS Madara. If Obito manages to save Sasuke, he likely doesn't do much better either. If Obito were to try and grab Hashirama to Kamui him, I think that Hashirama would be physically strong enough to break free of his hold. Another tactic he can use is wood clones in order to attack Obito, while he's vulnerable if he tries to suck Hashirama into the Kamui dimension. Hashirama is just on a different level than Obito and has some ways to deal with Kamui as well. I don't think he kills Obito though, as Obito could just decide to retreat, or he could use Izanagi and then retreat. Either result results in Hashirama clearing all wing additions. This what-if versus battle hybrid went about how I expected. I figured that how well each Hokage does would depend on how well they deal with Susanoo. This is because once Sasuke is done using Susanoo, he becomes very vulnerable after, due to how exhausting Mangekyo is for him. Just remember that if I say that I lean a certain way, it doesn't mean I definitively believe in it happening. As always, I'm always open to video suggestions and will credit you if you give me an original idea I end up using. I credited a comment for inspiring this video after all. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future. Comment something if you have something to say. And thank y'all for watching, I guess I'll see y'all next time.